Hello and welcome here on Eurosport from John Watson and Allard Kalff from a very warm Hungaroring for the 8th Hungarian Grand Prix. This is the first qualifying session. 77 laps are going to be run here on Sunday, and it's 29 degrees today on a circuit which is 3.9 or 2.4 miles, 3.9 kilometers long. This morning, John, fastest in the morning warm-up was Allard on a 1:16.204, and that time was a second faster than anybody else, and anybody else today headed by Michael Schumacher.
Well, I suppose no big surprises in Alain Prost, and more really in his Williams Renault that they were quickest. I think from our point of view, the fact that Damon Hill had a major brake problem, that kept him out of about 60 minutes of that session. But Michael Schumacher and Riccardo Patrese were second and third quickest. And the Benetton looked around the Hungaroring, to me, very impressive indeed. And what was so impressive about the car was that Schumacher and Patrese were able to use the car much more than we saw probably the majority of the rest of the field here able to do. And the progress that the Benetton Ford team are making, in my view, certainly is still continuing.
Benetton second and third, then Damon Hill after his problems. Ayrton Senna in 5th position, and if we go down the list, we've seen problems for Jean Alesi, who put his car in the gravel this morning. Mark Blundell, who went off but could continue. Alessandro Zanardi spun off, stalled the engine and couldn't continue. And then Johnny Herbert, who after 7 laps had a seized engine on his Lotus, and he was down in 25th position. Well, looking at Derek Warwick, who came back into the pits, and Suzuki was up into 8th position. Aguri Suzuki in the Footwork Mugen Honda for the 4th Grand Prix running. John, he's been in the top 10.
Well, Footwork, who are still running the McLaren active ride system on that car, again, this is a team that every time they go out with the car, whether it's private testing or at a Grand Prix, they pick up more information, and that translates into more speed. And Suzuki was very convincing indeed this morning. Unfortunately, teammate Derek Warwick last time with a throttle problem at the start of the session, and generally wasn't as happy with his car's balance as Suzuki was. An interesting little story sort of emanated recently from testing, and there's a feeling, in fact, that now the Footwork Mugen with that McLaren system may in fact be a faster Grand Prix car than the team from whom they got the system from in the first place. That's McLaren. Now, these are little theses that people come up with, particularly at test sessions, and they measure very different corner times, top speeds, and so on and so forth. But it is interesting that the feeling is that Footwork are now really getting on top of the earlier season problems they had with their new car and with the revised engine that Mugen have been providing the team with.
This morning, 1:16.2, fastest lap for Alain Prost, which is, I think, John, we could say only 0.8 of a second slower than last year's pole position time, which is remarkable close on a track that's very green.
Well, the track certainly was dusty this morning, and particularly at the edges of corners, right literally on the apex. We saw a number of cars clip that apex, plumes of dust go up in the air. Of course, the poor car following behind will have that settling on the road as he comes through, and you go from a lot of grip to no grip. And here at Hungaroring, grip really is the premium factor that you want. It is a relatively slow-speed circuit if 117 mile an hour lap is slow, but the nature of the circuit is fundamentally slow. And I would say 90% of teams here this weekend are using wings, as we see here on the back of Damon Hill's Williams. These are the 4-element wings that teams started to use at the beginning of the season, and they really only like to use them on circuits where maximum downforce can be applied. Here in Hungary, top speed is not significant. What is important is the ability to lap quickly.
Damon Hill, the first car who is going to go for a time, I suppose, because Aguri Suzuki went straight back into the pits. Damon being followed out of the pits by Michael Andretti. Andretti, who was up in the top 10 this morning for a very long time indeed, but ended up 12th in the end. Just drove out of the pits as well. But let's follow Damon Hill. Last year he qualified the Brabham in 25th position and he finished in 11th position, and this year he's basically not looking for a position on the last row of the grid.
Well, in the space of a year he's gone literally from back to front, and it's going to be a different Hungarian Grand Prix for Damon, not least of all because, talking about the nature of the circuit, here we see it is very twisty, a lot of work required for the driver, 77 laps in something like 30 degrees Celsius. That's just the ambient temperature. The racetrack temperature will be probably quite a lot higher than that. And fatigue, concentration, dehydration are all major factors in this Grand Prix. Another situation which, of course, as we've seen throughout the year, is with tyres. And Goodyear brought two compounds. They've got the C compound, which they believe is the prime race compound. They've got the backup B compound. They've got 2,000 tyres here. But, of course, again, the teams are only allowed a limited number of tyres. Some teams may take a couple of sets, or at least one set of Bs to try, because, again, the strategy here in Hungary is such an important part of the Grand Prix. Overtaking is very, very difficult, only one spot on the circuit, and if you do get caught behind a slower car, it often means just the end of your race, even though you're capable of running maybe 2 or even 3 seconds a lap quicker.
Damon Hill on his first flying lap. That's his intermediate time down at the bottom. There's no time to hold it against yet because he's the first driver who is doing a flying lap. Now coming up to the second intermediate point on the circuit. And then he should be able to finish a lap, 224.2 kilometers an hour on that intermediate. And that is faster than Damon did this morning when he couldn't better 220.
Well, of course, he's on fresh tyres, and he's had the benefit of running those laps he had this morning, and Damon will be extremely anxious indeed to redress that unfortunate stoppage. 1 minute 19.504, and considerably slower than Prost achieved this morning, but of course, again, first flying lap. And we have to see, really, we haven't yet had the opportunity to know what the character of this circuit is going to do to the tyres in qualifying. Now, traditionally over this season, we have seen the first or the second flying lap being the lap at which your quickest lap was achieved. Going back to this very slippery surface in the Hungaroring, it may well be it takes 3 or even 4 laps. On the second lap, you can see Damon already almost 1.5 seconds ahead of that intermediate point. So if he can carry that improvement all the way through this lap, you could almost, in fact, think he could take up to 2 seconds off his first effort, which would, of course, bring him into the middle, 1 minute 17.
Damon, who's just past that second intermediate point, 2.1 seconds, quicker than his fastest lap so far. And what's it going to be? Well, as John said, the middle 170s. 117s, I should say then, of course. Oh, a high 116, a very good effort by Damon Hill.
Very impressive from Damon, because what he did was pick up speed all the way through the lap. He didn't have any loss in the final 2 corners. Now, oh, and there's Michael Andretti, a little pretty pirouette, and that'll not do that set of tyres an awful lot of good. I think that when he did that spin, that was coming into the what is called here in Hungaroring the last corner, because the circuit and corners don't have corner names. They're just given numbers, and here we see Michael exiting that second gear left-hand corner, just literally too much right foot. Now, cars with traction control do spin. There are people in the pit lane who might imply that having traction control is a safety device. Traction control is singularly a performance device.
Damon Hill on his third lap. Now, John, one of the big advantages Damon is having at the moment is that he hasn't come across any traffic yet.
That's the bonus of being out early in a session. It works for you one weekend. The following weekend, you may find yourself on a track. Oh, and Damon running very wide on the exit. 16.567.
Well, another improvement from Damon Hill on his third flying lap. And there is Alain Prost.
And that lap would in fact have been, let's say, a tenth of a second faster had that left rear wheel not just dropped off the circuit into that little dip. Well, Alain Prost was quickest this morning, 1 minute 16.204. And he will obviously be thinking right now, well, Damon's improved dramatically. The circuit must be quicker. And that's, I'm sure, the one thought that Alain Prost is currently comforting himself with.
Damon, a 1:16.567. Then it's Alessandro Zanardi, a 1:20.4, and Michael Andretti on a 1:20.45. That's the situation here in Hungary at the moment. We're back after the break.
Eurosport Live.
Welcome back here on Eurosport. Ayrton Senna getting into his car, while the current situation is that Damon Hill is still fastest on that 1:16.567. Then the man we're looking at now, Riccardo Patrese, on a 1:18.512. Then Jean Alesi, Michael Andretti and Alessandro Zanardi, followed by Rubens Barrichello. That is the situation, and the big question, of course, is the circuit a little quicker than this morning?
Well, certainly it's a lot warmer at this time of day than it was some 2 hours ago. We're in car with Riccardo Patrese and confirming really what we saw this morning. And there you see Patrese's first split time, 0.8 of a second slower than Damon Hill. But what I've been watching with Benetton is that both drivers, Patrese and Michael Schumacher, have been able to lean really, really hard on the back end of the car. And that's what you need on this kind of circuit. While you need good grip to turn the car in, you need the confidence to turn the wheel, to open the throttle, and to get that speed. And both Benettons have displayed that this morning, I think, very effectively indeed. And the Patrese now, this is his 5th lap on his original set of tyres. His quickest time was set on his 3rd lap. And Patrese looking for improvement, 18.322. Small improvement for Riccardo Patrese. So the tyre is interesting. Even on lap 5, there's still good life left in those tyres.
But an 18.322 is 0.6 of a second slower than Riccardo Patrese managed this morning during the unofficial session, the 90 minutes, where Ayrton Senna was only 5th. Senna, who said they are not going to use the Series 8 engine, so he's got either the Series 7 or a Series 5 in the back, Sean.
Well, it says that they're both going to run Series 7s from information we were given earlier in the day. But some people would feel that even the 5 or 5.5 series, or let's say the non-air valve Ford HP engines, really are no disadvantage on a circuit like this. And in fact, if you remember back to last year, where Mika Häkkinen had an almighty battle with Martin Brundle. In fact, the 5 or 5.5 series Ford HP here last year appeared to be better, in my mind, than the 7 series was. So having 5, 7, 8, whatever you want, the difference in performance, not so great.
Riccardo Patrese on a very good lap indeed, a 1:17.755, a tenth of this morning time, and very firmly in second place at the moment.
And equally importantly, Allard, that was his 6th lap on that first set of tyres. That's good because very often in qualification we find that very quickly we determine which lap a quick lap can be done on. If you can run 6 laps and do that kind of time, there's a prospect of a very, very exciting session this afternoon.
"29 degrees it is at the moment, and the wind is getting, well, a little stronger than it was this morning. It's also changing direction, and they are expecting a heat wave for the coming weekend here in Hungary. While Alain Prost getting ready to do his first laps. Prost, who has never won here before, and today and tomorrow goes out to try and get his 30th pole position.
Well, I was speaking to Tom Walkinshaw a few moments before we went on air, and he was hoping really to get one of his 2 cars on to the front row of the grid. Well, currently he's got Riccardo Patrese alongside Damon Hill. We're only some 17 minutes into this first session, a long way to go tomorrow as well. But really what we would like to see here is a Ford engine car on the front row to really, let's say, add a little bit of spice, as we are in Hungary, to this Grand Prix. By having two Williams in the front row of the grid, that really does lock out any prospect of McLaren or Benetton being able to mix it with Damon Hill or Alain Prost. But Senna now beginning his first flying lap, and McLaren not quite up to the normal performance that one would expect from them. But the reason for that was they spent the session concentrating on revised programs for their active ride. And of course, you've got to go through that program to benefit from those alterations. I think McLaren have taken off that fourth element on that rear wing of Senna's car. In fact, they have. They've gone back to what I would describe as the barn door rear wing. And you can see that's a wing almost of the size that they used here last year when they had Honda power. And of course, that engine last year, probably very similar in horsepower to what Renault have here this year, approximately 800 horsepower.
The situation at the moment, Damon Hill, Riccardo Patrese, Jean Alesi, then Alessandro Zanardi, Michael Andretti is 5th, and then it's Rubens Barrichello 6th, Johnny Herbert 7th, Eric Comas 8th, JJ Leto is 9th, and Aguri Suzuki, well, he is 10th, but he only did one lap. So we've only had 9 runners so far, while Warwick, Senna, Fittipaldi, Wendlinger and Blundell are out on the circuit.
Well, Ayrton Senna certainly will be aware of the performance Riccardo Patrese put in, because he has completed now 7 laps on that original set of tyres, and it was on the 6th lap that he established his second fastest time so far of this afternoon's qualifying session. And Senna will, it's a comfort for a driver, because once traffic, and we saw one of the two Ligiers almost subliminally off the track, and here we have it in replay. This comes out, that was where Ayrton Senna almost got it all wrong. And that's Martin Brundle.
No, that's JJ Leto, actually, one of the towers.
Oh, and he does make contact with the barrier. That's the right rear kissing, and probably the right front then made it the right side damaged Sauber.
Well, and the Ligier we saw is Mark Blundell's. So Blundell having spun off would probably end his session.
And Senna virtually threw the car into the barriers himself. He was pushing very hard, just coming to that final second gear left-hand corner. Car stepped away from him, backed off, and now picking it up again. 1 lap gone, Ayrton Senna. You've got about 4, maybe 5 left on this set of tyres.
Ayrton Senna on his 4th flying lap. There we see skid marks. That is the Ligier of Mark Blundell. And I wonder where JJ Leto's car's gone to, John.
Well, it's up at the top end of the circuit, somewhere against the barrier. And in fact, this is the part of the circuit the car was. I would imagine that the marshalling here in Hungary quickly attached a tow rope to the car and literally pulled it away from its parked position. And Senna, this is not at a qualifying lap. He's just making his way around and recomposing himself, I would imagine, for another serious effort. Now, Senna did run with that 4th element on the rear wing of his car this morning, and I suspect part of his thinking, and it's only my supposition, that he knows he has got the ability, the skill, to drive the car on that very, very fine knife edge, which is really so difficult. Other drivers cannot do that. He is capable of doing it, but the margin is so fine. And we saw just 1 lap ago what happened when you step over that very fine margin. Now, this, I think, is a lap I hope we get to see from Ayrton Senna.
Well, there's the other Sauber.
And that's the same part of the circuit that we saw Mark Blundell's Ligier, and that is Carl Wendlinger's car. And it looks like, was that a left rear tire deflated? It looks suspiciously soft from where we're sitting in this. It's hard just to tell, but certainly that car is out for the day, and there's marks on the ground where they pushed it off the racetrack, and 2 Saibers out of the session very, very early on indeed. And Leto, his time 1 minute 24.596, will quickly see him fall to the bottom of the list. Benlinger much quicker, of course, 20.590, currently in 7th place. So yet again disappointment for a really, I think, character-building season for JJ Leto, and a season where really rumour has it that his situation in the team for 1994 is not at all certain.
Jerry Boutsen and Gerhard Berger going into that first corner. Of course, Boutsen, a former winner here with Williams in 1990. And he had pole position as well that day, and that's his only pole position of his Grand Prix career.
Watching Gerhard Berger, he turned up this morning with an enormous polystyrene cast on his left elbow. And many of our viewers may be aware that Gerhard had a minor operation last weekend. Well, that's not how to go through the chicane. And is that sin, or is that it is indeed, and that is a serious and very fundamental error on the part of Ayrton Senna. And that will be straight back into the pits, and things are not flowing in this first session for either McLaren or for Senna. We've seen Michael Andretti also have a spin much earlier in the session, and there is, I think, a little bit of pressure building up in the McLaren team, because in effect, in spite of those 3 victories they had earlier in the season, the Benetton team is now beginning to eclipse them.
Well, this morning we've seen that, and I think, John, also that Riccardo Patrese, as the second driver in the Benetton team, is much faster than Michael Andretti, the second driver in the McLaren team. So, as a team, Benetton is performing much better at the moment.
So going back to Gerhard Berger, he has this enormous polystyrene cast on his elbow, and there was some concern about his ability to actually compete over the weekend, and particularly for the Grand Prix. But Gerhard has made of very stern stuff. He's had a number of injuries in his lifetime, not least of all a very severe neck injury way back in 1984, I believe, and then of course Imola 1989 and Spa 92, and it doesn't really appear to be affecting his performance very much indeed.
Currently in 5th position, a 10th behind teammate Jean Alesi. And we're still waiting for either Michael Schumacher or Alain Prost to leave the garage and attack that 1:16.567, because I suppose, John, those are the 2 drivers that are going to, well, be able to attack that time.
Well, certainly Alain Prost. Oh, dear me, Gerhard, I tell you what, I bet you that cast got a right old wrapping against the side of those unyielding carbon fibre monocoques, and I can tell you, an unprotected arm suddenly hitting the inside of the chassis doesn't have to make your eyes water. And there's the man we've been talking about, Alain Prost, about to go out on his first run. Prost, of course, was quickest this morning, some 0.3 of a second faster than the provisional pole time by Prost's teammate Damon Hill. And really, this is the point in the season where Alain Prost has got the opportunity to lock up the 1993 Drivers' World Championship. And certainly having pole position will go a long way to securing yet another victory for him in 1993.
The gap currently between Damon Hill and Riccardo Patrese is 1.2 seconds. Then it's Ayrton Senna, who's on a 1:19.3, so that's a long way from Riccardo Patrese, and Alesi and Berger only a couple of tenths behind Senna. So all eyes on Alain Prost and this man, Michael Schumacher. What are they going to do on their first set of tyres?
Well, Schumacher sitting watching the monitor and just really building himself up and relying upon at this point the team to say, well, the circuit is about ideal for you to go out. Traffic, of course, at Hungaroring has always been a problem. Damon Hill wisely went out when the circuit was empty and got that time in, had virtually no traffic whatsoever. The circuit, of course, now much busier. And this is Alain Prost coming across the start-finish line for his first attempt at snatching away pole position from his teammate. But I would imagine Prost will take this lap relatively calmly, or certainly very much in the Prost mold, very unspectacularly. He knows that there's substantial life with the C compound tyre this weekend, and he's in no big rush right now to try and do it on this first flying lap.
Well, there are only 5 cars out on the circuit at the moment, John, so Prost has chosen the right time, I suppose, to go out, because it is very quiet indeed.
And we see Prost really just building up as he completes this first flying lap. And every corner he comes to, he's getting more confidence. There's more feel and more grip being transmitted through the car. And Alain Prost really is still one of those drivers who does rely on instincts rather than blind faith. And unlike many of the younger drivers who, if you say to them, just go flat through that corner, the car will do it, it's okay, don't worry about it. Prost has got to feel that sensation. He's not prepared to put himself in a position of compromise. And that's what that first 1 minute 22 second lap was all about.
Alain Prost, his second flying lap, while Michael Schumacher is coming out of the pits at this moment. And Prost, well, the car is pretty nervous, John. It's sliding away.
Looked a little bit nervous as he came through those corners directly behind the pits, and part of that, I suspect, is that on those easy out lap and then first flying lap, he hadn't really put the energy that you need into the tyre. So we have to watch him. He's 2/10 down at that first intermediate point, and we want to see whether he has negated that differential or will it in fact have extended. But Alain Prost is extremely canny, extremely cautious, and again this morning didn't look to be very spectacular until suddenly bang, well, there we see he's already a 10th under. And that's what you've got to never underestimate in Alain Prost. Because his driving style and technique is so sublime, you can never really tell when he's on a fast or a really hot lap.
Prost crossing the line for the third time this afternoon, a 1:16.460, good enough for pole position by a 10th at the moment. And then, of course, he's got 2 or 3, maybe 4 laps left in this set of tyres.
Well, I would expect now Alain Prost, he's got provisional pole position. He will be aware of that. And now he's going to get down to the serious job of locking out pole position here on Friday afternoon. And you're watching on the monitor. It is possible to see, Allard, you know, the differences in commitment when a driver is beginning to become serious, and now Prost is being very serious indeed.
Alain Prost at the moment a second away from last year's pole position time, which was 1:15.476. But the general belief is that tomorrow is going to be a quicker day.
Well, it's only 2/10 of a second more serious, but he picked up time between the first and second intermediate points on that previous lap. So one has the feeling, Allard, that we might see Alain Prost just kiss the high 1 minute 15s.
And this is lap 4 out of 4, a 1:16.3. Another 1/10 of a second improvement from Alain Prost. And I think he's backed off now.
He did. He backed off as he came into turn number 1. And here we are with Michael Schumacher. This is, well, Schumacher very slow. Now he's going to boot it, because when you want to do a quick lap, it doesn't matter the entry speed of the corner. It's getting the drive and getting the power on really early and hard, and that's what Schumacher did there. And that's a lot of intelligence from a very young man.
Well, Prost, Hill, Patrese, Senna and Alesi. That is the top 5 here at the moment, but this man will get into the top 5, Michael Schumacher.
What really we have to ask ourselves is Benetton Ford literally just fast enough to demote Damon Hill, who's currently second quickest, down to third. Michael Schumacher's time 1 minute 17.2 this morning.
Well, John, on his first flying lap, 0.4 of a second from Alain Prost, and that is on the first intermediate.
It's too much. He's too slow at that first intermediate. He wouldn't even be close to Damon Hill's time. Somebody off on the left, kicking up dust, and again, you can see the car some couple of hundred meters just ahead of Michael Schumacher. But this is Schumacher's first flying lap, and we've seen from both Damon Hill and Alain Prost that the first flying lap is not going to be your quickest. Schumacher coming up across the line. 16.8, well, significant improvement, 0.4 of a second quicker than he achieved this morning, and only 0.3 away from Damon Hill. Can he get a clear lap on this lap, or has he seen the footwork and he has backed off? So
Prost, Hill, Schumacher, Patrese and Senna. That's the top 5 at the moment here in Hungary. We've got about 25 minutes left after the break here on Eurosport.
Eurosport Live.
Welcome back here in Hungary, where Alain Prost is still on the provisional pole position from Damon Hill, Michael Schumacher, Riccardo Patrese in 4th, now Martin Brundle up to 5th, Ayrton Senna down in 6th, and Jean Alesi in 7th. Well, very good effort by Martin Brundle, who is now on his 4th flying lap. And the Ligier team was a little bit off the pace this morning, John. And they're getting back up there.
well, in fact, Mark Brundle was 7th cricket this morning, but just watching Jean Alesi, well, the viewers at home are in a commercial break. I reckon Jean Alesi should get a card into Equity. That's the Thespians trade union, because he's been entertaining us at every single opportunity. And I never thought you could get a Ferrari so sideways. In fact, he almost sometimes has the back end of the corner, entering the corner first, but picks it up and gets it through the corner. You see Alesi down in 7th spot, and teammate Gerhard Berger immediately behind him in 8th.
Well, and the rest of the top 16 coming across the screen, with Barrichello in 15th, Comas 16th, Boutsen 19th, and Christian Fittipaldi in 20th position.
Well, Senna preparing himself for another little go, and whether he remains on his original set of tyres, if they're not already clogged full of all that red earth that he would have accumulated when he shot across one of the chicanes. And I just wonder, was there wisdom in the car setup that Senna has chosen to go with by taking off that 4th element? We see here on Schumacher's car an additional piece of rear wing that's forward facing and above the height of the further 3 elements. And I just wonder whether Senna maybe bit off more than he could chew, because I suspect the reason for him falling off was just the balance was too fine.
Well, Michael Schumacher, that is a slow lap from him, going back into the pits. He set his fastest time on his 3rd flying lap, and then did try, but he's now in his 7th lap and going into the pits and think about the settings and go and get another new set of tyres. Well, Brundle is coming into the pits as well. And John, this is one of the Grand Prix. People thought Senna or Schumacher could beat the Williams.
I think people hoped that a Benetton or a McLaren might be in the front row of the grid and at least have the opportunity to snatch away the lead into the first corner. And well, Williams have been covering their own tail a little bit on that situation. They did a lot of testing last week at Silverstone, both with active and passive. In other words, without that active suspension system, and in fact the car was very competitive indeed. But just to redress the situation regarding standing starts, Alain Prost did about 10 practice starts with full fuel load at Silverstone to, if you like, perfect what he's not quite managed to do this year, and that is get an active car off the start line from pole position first into the first corner. Now, doing it when it really counts is a different matter as well, but at least he will be more confident, and he will certainly know the car much more from that little exercise 1 week ago at Silverstone. And Senna now back in his car, and his little onboard computer, that's his own personal brain, I'm sure has been overheating trying to work out what went wrong in that first qualifying run, because it all did go wrong. Although his time currently keeps him in 6th place, he will be very dissatisfied indeed with that performance, both of himself and of his car.
Damon Hill ready to go out of the pits. All tyres are checked. Well, and approved, which wasn't the case with Alain Prost this morning. We had a wrong number on, or no number actually, on one of the tyres. Scrutineers forgot to mark it.
And of course, the man who pays the penalty is the driver, in this case, Alain Prost. His car was pushed backwards down the pit lane, and I'm sure there were sniggers from a few of the garages in the pit lane here in Hungaroring, but now with Damon on his 2nd set of tyres, and he is probably feeling much more comfortable than he did in the morning session when he had a major brake problem, and it took about an hour for the Williams team to replace the brakes and of course re-bleed them. And hydraulics are a major feature on the Williams car, and a lot of time, and I think not just effort, but it's a really very important part of any Grand Prix car with active suspension where hydraulics are concerned. You've got to go through a very tedious process of bleeding that system to ensure that all the air that could be trapped has been bled away.
Well, Prost is having a look at the monitor to see what teammate Damon Hill is doing. Starting his first flying lap on his 2nd set of tyres.
And Damon is not doing what we saw Alain Prost doing. This is a maximum attack from Damon. He certainly, in that one run earlier in the session, re-established the confidence that he may have felt he had lost through a somewhat disruptive session this morning. And really the important thing is just to keep it neat, clean and tidy, and utilize all the horsepower advantages he has with his Renault engine, and of course all the sophistication within the Williams active suspension system. And who knows, we might see Damon Hill just pip his 3 times world champion teammate Alain Prost.
Well, John, whatever it's going to be, I suppose it's going to be another Williams pole position, which is the 20th consecutive pole for the team.
Well, Damon now coming up to the completion of his first lap on the 2nd set of tyres. And a good clean exit this time. 16.3.
That's an improvement on what he did before, but he is half a second away from Alain Prost on that 1:15.817 and the 1:16.375 is the difference between the 2 Williams drivers, and they've both done 7 laps now.
Of course, the time that both the Williams drivers will be aiming for will be Riccardo Patrese' pole position from last year, as Michele Alboreto once again not really having a particularly enjoyable season and almost overdoes it, attempting to spin the car back. And I think in fact he may have, well, he was very close to stalling his engine, but in the meantime back with Damon on his 2nd flying lap, 2nd set of tyres, and Senna having his original set of tyres cleaned up.
And the other rear wing back on, John.
Surprise, surprise, Allard. You know, sometimes these old racing drivers who turn racing commentators, and that's how Michele Alboreto lost it, just too fast in, not enough grip. But going back to Ayrton Senna, I'm not surprised to see that rear wing back on the car. He tried to get away with something which was just too marginal, didn't work, and finally wisdom overcame, in his case, judgment.
Damon Hill being trapped behind Ukio Katayama. Whoops.
And I tell you what, now that didn't look quite as bad from Damon Hill's cockpit as it was on your screen. but I tell you, it was pretty close nonetheless.
Katsuyama, who is currently not in the top 20.
You see, all the warning signals went out for Damon. The most important thing was to make the right decision as to which side he wanted to pass Katayama. He chose left, he chose the correct side. That'll be forgotten about now. Other than Damon, well, you see, cruising around the circuit, he's lost the opportunity to pick up further position, or certainly further time, and here we see it in car now. Katayama's car breaking away. Damon's off the throttle. Which way should it go? Left. Good decision, clear decision, and probably saying something under his breath which he aren't allowed to say on air.
Damon Hill starting another lap. Coming out of the last corner, as it's called. And he's got 4 more laps to go. 3 more laps to go, sorry.
Well, he's completed his 9th lap and starting his 10th. So Damon, the clock now running down, and he will really want to do the best he can. The track, as far as we can see, appears pretty well clear for him. And again, exiting that very quick downhill right-hand gear, right-hand 4th gear corner. A nasty bump just at the apex, but cars with active suspension very much less affected by these bumps. And talking last night to Martin Brundle and Mark Blundell, and there you see it indeed, marginally 77,000 quicker than Alain Prost. And undoubtedly, if we went to the pits, we'll see Alain Prost having a quick snack in the pits as he nibbles away yet again at his fingernails. But it's the second intermediate point that really will make Alan bite. Well, he's lost it. He's 2/10 down. So Alan can remove his fingers from his mouth and just relax a little bit more, because this particular lap is not going to make any challenge whatsoever to Alain Prost's 1 minute 15.817.
Another improvement, though, from Damon Hill, 16.135, and he has got 1 more lap, and it's the one we're on.
Oh, well, that bump I was talking about, there you see exactly what it does. Now, that's an active car. Imagine what it would be like in a passive car. Now, I think what Damon did is say, I know it can be taken flat, but I'm not quite sure. Well, I'm going to do it. He's got 1 lap to do it in. He attempted it. He's only a little over a 10th slower on that first intermediate point, but I suspect the time that he will have left to make up is insufficient. But I suspect he went through there flat, found out that it isn't really possible, and, well, he's learned something. He's pushing very, very hard indeed. I mean, exiting corners over the curb. He is not holding back. And again, big oversteer. Completely lost the line in that corner, and really, Damon's time, 1 minute 16.402. If the back end of the car had been able to grip throughout that lap, well, that would have put Prost under a great deal of pressure. As it happens, the left rear of the car, that's the side, or the corner on the car that does the maximum amount of work, just couldn't sustain the loads. And in 3 points in the circuit, we saw Damon, I would have thought, with on the lock stops. In fact, he had so much opposite lock on. So, Ayrton Senna, what can you do now? You've had a very unsatisfactory first run. You went back out again just to check the car out with that 4th element added to your rear wing. You've decided that that is the right way to go. Thank you very much, Ayrton. And now Ayrton Senna down in 7th place, because we've got a surprise Pierluigi Martini in the Minardi Ford with the ex-TWR Jaguar Ford HBs. God knows what series engine they are. And Michele Albretto yet again off the circuit. Poor Derek Warwick becoming involved. But Martini, outstanding effort indeed. 1 minute 19.129. A real surprise performance. I think the reverberations down the pit lane, and there you see the footwork in the cloud dust, sudden lift off, and Michele showing us how to complete a nice 3-point turn as footwork rejoin the track. Derek Warwick, we think, as Michele Alboreto tips the barrier, and now Warwick's car being towed away.
And of course, a lot of sand being put down on the track at that particular point. Ayrton Senna been out with that wing, then went to get a new set of tires, and this is his first flying lap on that set of tires.
Well, he's just taking it easy. In fact, he may well have been made aware of the problem around the back of the circuit. And while there we see it, the car's footwork being pulled away. And I just wonder how much dust, sand there is out in that part of the circuit. Senna very slowly are coming up to that now. He will find out for himself. Hungaroring is one of those race tracks that really probably the most frustrating of any. Monte Carlo equally difficult, but here there's always somebody somewhere, if not on the track going slowly coming in, and usually on your line, has gone off and kicked up an enormous amount of dust.
Ayrton Senna, and I must say the time of Pierluigi Martini in fifth, that 1:19.129, is very good indeed, but if we look at last year's time, a 1:19.1 would put you 13th on the grid, so I suppose there's quite a few people who should be going quicker, but are not at the moment. But nevertheless, a very good time, because he's in front of Martin Brundle, Jean Alesi, Gerhard Berger, Aguri Suzuki, and that's the sort of people you expect to be at the back end of the top 10.
Well, Senna getting his head down, and with the extra downforce, that fourth element on the rear wing is going to provide him with more confidence, more grip. As we see Warwick's footwork being pushed away, and the marshal's not doing a particularly efficient job with that. And Senna just over 6/10 slower than Alain Prost at the first intermediate point. Now, for sure, Senna is en route to putting himself on the second row of the grid alongside Schumacher. Currently that place is held by Riccardo Patrese, but 1.2 seconds now the difference between himself and Alain Prost. And if he can navigate himself through here, well, I was going to say cleanly, he got the back end of the car moving ever so marginally, and now into last corner. He takes a different line to most people. He comes in very, very early, hugs the line of the corner, then really nails the throttle. 18.206. In fact, fifth place, some half a second behind Patrese. Well, that was his first attempt proper. And now let's see what happens on this particular lap.
If we look down the list, Prost and Hill, Schumacher and Patrese, that is the top four. So it's Williams, then Benetton, then Ayrton Senna and Pierluigi Martini, Martin Brundle 7th, Jean Alesi 8th, Gerhard Berger is 9th, Aguri Suzuki in 10th, then it's Alessandro Zanardi in 11th, Michael Andretti 12th, Johnny Herbert 13th, Carl Wendlinger is 14th, but that was a time set very early on his first or second flying lap after he spun. And then we see Rubens Barrichello.
Ayrton Senna has repeated what we saw him do on his first set of tyres earlier in this session at the very same point in the circuit. Coming through that little chicane, the back end got away. He was only 9/10 quicker, or slower, sorry, than Alain Prost. And there we once again put the wheel up the curb on the inside. So fine a balance is it, even with that additional element on the rear wing. And what a frustrating day Ayrton Senna has had. It may well be the reason he didn't turn up at the circuit. He didn't spend time on Thursday with his engineers at the circuit. Is this the price he is paying?
Well, Prost, Hill, Schumacher, Patrese and Senna, that's the situation. We are going to take a short break here in Eurosport, and we'll be back with the last 5 minutes after that.
Eurosport Live.
back here on Eurosport. Welcome back to the Hungaroring, where we are watching Alain Prost on his first flying lap and his second set of tyres. He is on pole position, but can he better his own 1:15.817? Well, not on this lap.
Well, Allard, as you can see, and as our viewers at home can see, Alain Prost is not at race speed or qualifying speed. He's just repeating what he did on his first set of tyres. And it worked for him on the first set. He also, of course, will be aware that there's a fair amount of traffic around the circuit, so he wants to wait until the clearest possible opportunity arises, and then he will do the business.
Well, he's going to pass Andrea de Cesaris first.
And that's a problem, because Andrea is not going to concede the corner, and all Andrea de Cesaris has managed to do is throw both down. But Prost will be able to out-accelerate him very easily indeed. Going offline, you can see the little dust being thrown up by Prost's car, so don't expect too much from Alain Prost on this lap either. His exit speed out of last corner, the fact that he had to go offline to get past de Cesaris signals to me that Alain will just complete one more lap. And then on his 11th lap, this is his 10th lap, try and achieve an improvement. It's that 1:15.4 from Riccardo Patrese last year that he really has got his sights upon. And I have to say, it looks that it is possible that Prost could achieve that.
Lazy running out of laps very rapidly. He's in 9th position, a 1:19.438, and that means he's just a little bit slower than teammate Gerhard Berger. And as we said earlier on, who's got that elbow injury?
Well, Prost has got a clear run up into last corner now, and this is where he wants to maximize both horsepower and grip. And clean exit, different camera angle.
This has got to be the lap, because it's the last flying lap Alain Prost has if he wants to improve on his time today. Well, if he doesn't, it doesn't really matter, because he's fastest anyway, I suppose.
Yes, Allard, but it's a psychological battle that goes on, not so much with his own teammate, but with Senna and Schumacher. Because Prost is extremely aware that both those guys are people he wants to be as far ahead of us as possible. You see 3.5 tenths quicker than his pole intermediate time. And hopefully Riccardo Patrese will stay as he has done to the right, and Prost got through cleanly, didn't lose time. Second intermediate point, only 2 tenths. Well, he needs to find 4 tenths to put himself ahead of pole time from 1992. But really, if nothing else, this is just consolidation of Alain Prost as being the man to beat for the pole position here this weekend.
1:15.488, and that is only 100th of a second slower than last year's pole position time.
I would say Alain Prost will return to the pits very happy indeed.
Michael Schumacher has moved into second place, a 1:16.003 for the Benetton driver. So it's now Williams with Prost, Benetton with Schumacher, Williams with Damon Hill, and then Benetton with Riccardo Patrese. So what they said at Benetton before the session has happened in the dying seconds, literally, of this session, that Michael Schumacher has put his Benetton on the provisional front row.
And he's still on a lap. He's only completed 10 flying laps. Well, Tom Walkinshaw said, I want to get that one of our cars, talking principally about Schumacher, onto the front row. If we can maintain that over 2 days of qualifying, I think we've got a realistic chance of victory here. And I tell you what, that prophecy could well be true.
Watching Martin Brundle's car with Mark Blundell on board. Blundell, who spun off very early in the session, has taken over Brundle's car is now in 16th position, has improved, and is the last car out on the circuit. No improvement from Michael Schumacher, who's just crossed the line. So it's Prost, Schumacher, Hill, Patrese and Senna. That is the top 5 here in Hungary after the first day of qualifying. And, well, it all sort of looks for a good second day, John.
Certainly does, Allard, and with the track now with a little bit of rubber down and with this C compound. This is a revised C compound. It's a little bit softer than that we have seen at other Grand Prix during the year, and that's a contribution, I think, to the speed we're seeing on this first day.
So if we look through the list, Prost, Schumacher, Hill, Patrese, Senna. That was the top 5. Then Pierluigi Martini. Excellent qualifying performance from him today. Martin Brundle in 7th. Gerhard Berger in 8th. And then in 9th place, as we look at the top 8 on our screen, is Jean Alesi. 10th, Aguri Suzuki. 11th, Alessandro Zanardi. And then we see 3 Ford-engined cars, actually. Zanardi, Andretti and Herbert, 11th, 12th, 13th. Wendlinger, Barrichello, Blundell up to 16th on his very last lap. Then it's Fittipaldi, Alio, Comas, Butson, De Cesaris, Katayama, Bador, and the slowest two today were Michele Alboreto and JJ Leto, who basically only did 1 lap, John.
Yes, Alboreto and Leto, their performances, in the case of Leto, he creamed it down the barrier, right-hand side was damaged, and that ended his session on his 3rd lap. Michele Alboreto provided a great deal of entertainment for us by spinning at every, I think, conceivable corner on the circuit, and still ended up being, what, 1,000th of a second, I think it is, slower than teammate Bador. But that was the man who probably is the most disappointed, Ayrton Senna. We don't see him do that very often.
This was Hungary today. We'll be back tomorrow at exactly the same time. We hope you enjoyed today and hope you're back tomorrow. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.
As the teams prepare for round 11 of the championship in exhausting 35-degree heat, their labours follow 3 weeks of intense work since the German Grand Prix. They've been testing new configurations for the Hungaroring near Budapest, because what's needed here is high aerodynamic downforce for the comparatively slow, bumpy and twisty track, and the right tyre strategy to minimise stops in a race which is going to last for nearly 2 hours in high temperatures which are very demanding for the car and the driver. After his appalling luck in both the British and the German Grand Prix, Damon Hill is hoping for a more than well-deserved change of fortune at the Hungaroring, scene of one of only 2 Grand Prix he drove in for the Brabham team last year.
You come to Hungary here and they're always cornering, always braking, and they're actually doing some driving. And although it's a little bit too tight and twisty really for Formula One cars to race on, it's actually good fun to drive on.
You've had 3 weeks since the German Grand Prix and you've done a lot of work. Now, what specific things have you had to do to the car in order to make it suit this track?
Well, the biggest difference is the amount of downforce you run. Straight line speed is not an advantage here because you have so many corners, and the important thing is to carry as much wing as you can. But then for the race, you don't want to be too slow on the straight. So we've done testing on, we tested a few different aerodynamic tweaks and also some damping stuff in an effort to really save the tyres and get a car that's quick in a straight line but also got the grip in the corners. Overtaking is virtually impossible. It sounds a ridiculous thing to say, but it's true. At Hungary, overtaking is extremely difficult unless you have a massive performance advantage. And qualifying is therefore very important. And you just have to get a good start. If you haven't qualified well, you have to get a good start and try and make a place up in the first few corners.
Well, now, after your cruel luck at Silverstone and in Germany, 3rd time lucky in Hungary?
Well, I'll be certainly looking forward to break any jinx I might have, and I don't believe I have a jinx, by the way. I think it's just unfortunate, but, you know, Hungary, I mean, the sooner the better as far as I'm concerned.
And I promise you that until you cross the line, I'm not going to say a word.
Keep it zipped, Murray.
Damon's failure to score in the last 2 races has dropped him to 4th in the championship, behind the brilliant Michael Schumacher. But another win for his teammate Alain Prost will put the Frenchman in a strong position for his 4th World Championship. Schumacher's Benetton has been getting better and better as the season has progressed. And with 4 second places already, Michael is a genuine contender for his 2nd career victory here in Hungary. But to win, he'll have to beat Ayrton Senna, who's been critical of the bumpy, twisty track which made him and a lot of others spin in practice. And Ayrton's won here 3 times and finished 2nd 4 times in the 7 Hungarian Grand Prix. Alain Prost has never won in Hungary, but the amiable and painstaking Frenchman continues with the superb form which has already won him 7 races this year. Because even though he too spun in practice, he starts from pole position for the 10th time this year, for a race where a high place on the grid is vital. 10 poles, a brilliant achievement. No surprises in the first 3 rows of the grid, but Pierluigi Martini's superb 7th place is outstanding. The cheerful little Italian only returned to the championship at Silverstone, and he's right on the pace in his underfunded Minardi Ford. A great effort. Yet another Williams grid front row ahead of Schumacher's Benetton and Senna's McLaren. Gerhard Berger an excellent 6th despite a painful elbow injury, with a euphoric Martini ahead of Alesi's Ferrari. Derek Warwick and Aguri Suzuki well up in their footwork cars in front of Blundell and Brundle 12th and 13th. And Johnny Herbert a despondent 20th for Lotus after a lot of problems. With a bumpy, slippery surface and tyre stops, it's going to be a very hot and demanding race. For 77 laps here is a long, long way. Amazingly, Prost has stalled at the start of the parade lap, so he's got to start last at the back of the grid instead of from pole position. So, there's the green flag. The red light is the middle of these 3. And it's go now. Damon Hill gets away well, so does Michael Schumacher. There's a Ferrari storming along at the back, and that's Alesi. Damon Hill leads, Schumacher is 2nd, Senna is 3rd, but Berger goes through into 2nd place, loses it to Senna on the right-hander, and as they come down the hill, it's Hill, Senna, Berger, Schumacher. Alesi is up from 8th position to 5th at the first corner. The Ferraris are going well so far, and Ayrton Senna is going to give Damon Hill a very hard time indeed, because he has won this race 3 times already, Senna. He's finished 2nd 4 times and runs wide, which gives Berger the opportunity to close up and Damon Hill to extend the gap a bit. Now, this is the chicane, and already it looks to me as though Ayrton Senna is creating a bit of a traffic jam, and somebody goes off. It's Barrichello and a wheel off. Well, my goodness, things are certainly happening in Hungary. Prost fails to start from pole position. Rubens Barrichello loses a wheel and goes off on the first lap. Damon Hill is leading, harried by Ayrton Senna, who has got Gerhard Berger right behind him. Now, Hill completes lap 1, 76 to go. And the 2 Benettons are absolutely together. It's Berger, and Schumacher goes through and takes Patrese. So somewhere on that first lap, Michael Schumacher, who started from 3rd place on the grid, was passed by his teammate Riccardo Patrese and has regained the place. Oh, that's a replay of Rubens Barrichello going off.
Yes, it looked like Barrichello hit somebody. His right front wheel had obviously been plucked off against the left rear of somebody else. Quite while he continued driving on what was clearly a 3-wheeled car, I don't know, unless he thought he was moving to the car in a safer place. But I think the real interest now is going to come from the fact that Gerhard Berger made a pretty good job of that pretty tough start. Senna, Schumacher, Patrese and Berger were all in there muscling it out, but Berger is going to be holding up the Benettons. We've got Schumacher having a go already, but Berger's not going to want to give up that place easily.
And at the end of the second lap, with 75 to go, as you watch Berger and Schumacher third and fourth. Damon Hill leads Ayrton Senna by 2.5 seconds, and Berger's not going to be at all anxious to yield here. He was only 16th in the warm-up, having had handling problems with his race car and switched to the spare car, which seems to be going well, but Schumacher is swarming all over him, and is very anxious indeed to get past, because he's actually being held up by Berger. We're with Schumacher now, third in fourth position behind Gerhard Berger's Ferrari.
Now here's where Schumacher's got to start planning his overtaking manoeuvre. He can only really get by, bar a mistake from Berger, into the first corner at the end of the start-finish straight. He's now coming down to the hairpin, through a chicane, 120 miles an hour through here, third gear, down up to 150 miles an hour, down to second gear. Now Schumacher's got to get right on the back of Berger as they go through this next right 180-degree corner. It's going to be difficult. His front wing is going to lose downforce from being right behind Berger, but here's where he needs to get on top of, and he looks well placed. A puff of distracting dust there from Berger, but Schumacher looks well placed. He will certainly try and have a look around Berger now. He goes to the outside. Oh, and he's... Now that was a magnificent attempt there. Tremendous overtaking manoeuvre there from Schumacher.
Absolutely brilliant, because he sold Gerhard Berger a dummy. He moved up on the right. Berger moved across to block him. Schumacher calmly moved to the left and drove round the outside of the Ferrari, which shows how well the Benetton handles. And to prove it, Riccardo Patrese, who is in fifth position, is having a go at the Ferrari himself now. And Ayrton Senna, and there's a spinner, and off goes Schumacher. Well, I spoke a bit too soon, but his car is perfectly okay. He will have got some dust on the tyres, and he joins behind Brundle, who is in 10th position. So, whilst all this is going on, remember that Prost is fighting his way through the field, and Alain Prost is in 19th position at the end of the third lap. And here is a replay from Michael Schumacher's car. He turns into the right-hander there. Now, this is the chicane. He would have been doing about 140 miles an hour as he approached it. Spins off, debris all over the place, and Schumacher has got to fight his way through now.
I really think that was rather a lapse of concentration there from Schumacher. He'd driven extraordinarily well to get by Berger around the outside into that first corner. He'd had a slide, the back end did come round, the car oversteered, he controlled it, but he managed to get around Berger at the same time. Now, having got ahead, he was clearly under no pressure from Berger, and maybe he's got an oversteer characteristic there. That was the second time the back came round, but of course when he did go off, he couldn't control it. So we have to watch that to see how he gets on. Meanwhile, we're going to have to now see if Patrese can pull the same sort of manoeuvre on Berger that Schumacher did. Patrese is not quite as fast as Schumacher, but he still should be half a second or a second or so faster than Berger.
Damon Hill crosses the line to complete his fifth lap. Something thrown up, I think it was just a bit of paper. Ayrton Senna is adopting his usual strategy of keeping as close to the Williams in front as he can in order to pressurise its driver, which is Damon Hill, and hope that something will go wrong. And Senna is now 3.6 seconds behind Hill, who's put up the fastest lap of the race so far. This is a replay of Michael Schumacher spinning off in the Benetton, and you see Jean Alesi's car in the background passing him, and Alain Prost is up to 16th position. And we're riding with the Williams now.
You can see this circuit, actually. It's probably the most demanding, the most physically demanding circuit on a calendar. You can see, too, just how much rear wing the cars are carrying. It's 70% corners around here, which makes it one of the most stressful circuits. Lots of cornering. To get the best lap time from the car, that means the most amount of downforce, because you need downforce to get around the corners quickly. And you can see just that some of these cars, like the Williams and McLaren and Benetton, have got an extra wing at the top edge, at the leading aspect of their rear wing, is an extra wing in front of the main rear wing, and that is all in the quest of more downforce, as Prost has another look.
Yes, Prost having a look at Aguri Suzuki's footwork, and Damon Hill is on his 14th lap now, and that is Andrea De Cesaris in the 021 Tyrrell. And we're looking back now to see where Ayrton Senna is in relation to Damon Hill. That's the answer. 3 times the winner here, 4 times second here. It looks as though it's going to be 5 times second here, but there's a long, long way to go. Lap 14, 77-lap race. It lasts for 1 3/4 hours. The heat is intense, and here is the battle. 3rd, Berger. 4th, Riccardo Patrese. 5th is Alesi. 6th is still Andretti. 7th is Michael Schumacher. Warwick is 8th. Martini is 9th. Martin Brundle is in 10th place. 3 British drivers in the top 10 places. Alain Prost is up to 11th and behind Martin Brundle. Maybe we'll be able to have a look at that later on, but this is the real interest in the race in terms of battles for positions. Age shall not wither, etc. And Riccardo Patrese, who is in 4th position, is 39 years old, the most experienced Grand Prix driver of them all. Incredibly, this is his 251st Grand Prix, and Michael Schumacher is showing signs of really pushing Michael Andretti in the background now. Schumacher in 7th place. He's only 3.8 seconds ahead of Derek Warwick, who is 8th. And Damon Hill is now on his 16th lap. So let's enjoy this.
Now, we've actually heard from the pits that Prost apparently just stalled. He had no mechanical troubles. And this really is bad news for Allard. He's somebody who's this has happened to him before at Donington in the wet race, and of course at Monaco when he had that stop-go penalty. He seems to have, in his quest for smoothness, this sort of aversion for really revving an engine hard. And these are racing engines. They rev to some 15,000 revs, which is 3 times as high as your average road car. And they do need to be bullied in this situation, and sometimes he just seems to take it too smoothly. Oh, and that is Andretti. Oh, that is very bad news for Andretti there. It looks like he's got a mechanical problem of some sort. Nothing looks damaged at the moment. Great effort. This chap really does not have a lot of luck. He really doesn't.
Well, I really do feel desperately sorry for Michael Andretti. He was in the points, very much needing a good finish to do his self-respect some good. And on lap 16 now, Damon Hill, that you're looking at, is lapping a couple of tenths slower at the present moment than Ayrton Senna, but he's got nothing to worry about because he's over 16 seconds ahead of him. Berger is just a couple of seconds behind Ayrton Senna. Up to 8th position has come Alain Prost. He's cutting through the midfield like a hot knife through butter. And Prost in the Williams Renault has got Derek Warwick in 7th place ahead of him, and then Michael Schumacher, and Prost can be in the points before very long, and Andretti is in the garage.
Yes, as we look at Andretti there, just looking at the monitor, with Andretti having fallen out and that putting a bit of clear space in front of Schumacher, Schumacher has been able to lap 3 seconds quicker in one go, just bang. That's how much he was being held up. Now this looks interesting now. We've now got Schumacher right up behind Patrese, and he could well do something about it. He can't this lap. It doesn't look like it, but we'll see next time round. Well, Schumacher's got past Alesi, of course, in order to be right up behind there, so we didn't see that. Maybe he had a problem. And that's Senna. Senna has stopped. What a dreadful race for McLaren.
Ayrton Senna has probably seen his World Championship disappear if Prost can keep up the pressure, because with the Brazilian out to join his teammate Michael Andretti, Ayrton Senna out on lap 18 and Michael Andretti out on lap 16. Both the McLarens disappear, and we're still waiting for the battle for what is now 2nd place to come through. And here it is, and Michael Schumacher is challenging Gerhard Berger, and he takes the 2nd place. That is an absolutely magnificent passing move. At the one place where he can do it, as into the pits for tyres comes Jean Alesi, who was down to 6th position. And the race order now is Hill leading Schumacher by 42 seconds. Berger 3rd, Patrese in 4th position. Alain Prost is not only in the points but up into 5th place. And Derek Warwick is perhaps temporarily but nevertheless in the points at 6th place now that Jean Alesi has come in for a new set of tyres. And I was told by the Williams people that they may be making a very early tyre stop. When they said early, they meant as early as lap 15. Well, we're well past that now. And Gerhard Berger into the pit lane for new tyres, and that means to say that Michael Schumacher is up into 2nd place, and Patrese is 3rd. In 4th position, Prost right behind the Italian. as Gerhard Berger takes on new tyres. So Hill on lap 20 leading Schumacher by nearly 41 seconds. Damon has got time to come into the pits in the lead, change tyres and rejoin in the lead.
Yes, that really was a great demonstration when we saw Schumacher go by Berger of the difference in calibre between these two drivers. Patrese have been rather weakly trying to have a look to get by Berger for some 6-7 laps, whatever it was. The moment Schumacher came up a lot behind Berger, Schumacher pulled the very same manoeuvre and got away with it on the first lap. He came up behind him. So quite outstanding driving from Schumacher. He very much deserves to be in second place from that. And incidentally, we've heard that the problems with both McLaren cars was because of throttle problems. They do have this fly-by-wire throttle, which means there's no cable. It's worked by electronics, although apparently the two problems were not the same. So we're obviously not quite sure what the exact details of that were at this stage.
Very interesting that, because it's a very advanced technical feature. And this is into the pits comes Alain Prost to take on new tyres. And this is going to help him no end. The Frenchman metaphorically kicking himself in the cockpit. He's got to make sure he gives it some welly this time when he blasts out of the pit. And that's a long tyre change. My goodness, Prost is having terrible luck in this race. He fails to start from his pole position, and there is a problem with the right rear for some reason. And Prost, having fought his way up to 4th position, is seeing the seconds tick away and losing places. There's a rear wing problem of some kind. Meantime, Damon Hill is cutting through the field. He has just passed Thierry Boutsen.
It looks at the back of that Williams car as if there is a problem with the structural mounting of that rear wing, I would say, from where I'm looking. They're going to change it looks like they're going to change that rear wing in entirety. The rear bodywork had to come off to do that.
And straight into the wall goes the Ferrari of Jean Alesi. He's gone off. He's had handling problems all through practice. He got very few practice laps as a result of it. And maybe there was a problem with that computerized suspension setup. Here is a replay. Coming towards us is Michele Alboreto. On the right is Wendlinger, followed by Suzuki. And Alesi touches wheels with Christian Fittipaldi's Minardi. And of course, it's tremendously quick there. He's pushed right offline, nothing he could do. Straight into the gravel trap, debris flying off everywhere. Out of the gravel, across the grass, totally loses traction, slams into the Armco. And the popular French Sicilian, who has had such a dreadful season for Ferrari, is out of the race again. That's the 7th time in 11 races he has failed to finish. And Damon Hill in the lead on lap 24 at the end of 35 seconds ahead of Michael Schumacher. Is coming in for new tyres. You know what happened to Alain Prost? He had a problem there. Damon Hill, of course, their test driver, knows everything about this car that there is to know. And this hopefully will be a smooth and effortless... Yes, lovely, lovely, lovely. Damon Hill, 6.7 seconds. And he came in the lead, and he rejoins in the lead behind Marc Blundell, who has been lapped and is in 14th place in his Renault-propelled Ligier. So that was a beautiful stop by Damon Hill and the Williams team. 6.7 seconds to change all 4 tyres and wheels. Schumacher is now 33.0 seconds behind Hill. But Hill is on new tyres and Schumacher is not.
Well, news from the pits on Prost, first of all. Apparently, Prost felt a vibration with his car. Now, this is Schumacher coming in for his stop. Now, it's going to be pretty crucial for him to get through this without any problem at all. He's going to have a success in his chase of Damon there. Schumacher, yes, another good stop. Not exceptional, 6.05 seconds. But back to Prost. Prost apparently felt he had a vibration from the rear end of the car. He came into the pits, and the team are now changing the rear wing. But it could possibly be that because of this auxiliary wing we spoke about, this extra wing further forward and higher up on the main wing, that's put extra stresses on the main structure. Now, clearly a team like Williams would have taken that into account in its design. We don't yet know if there was a real problem or if there's anything actually broken or not.
And with Alain Prost still patiently and very hot indeed, I'm sure, with the build-up of heat, not to mention the tension. Sits in his Williams waiting to see if they can fix it. He's a long way behind now. And because of Michael Schumacher's tyre stop, his teammate Riccardo Patrese has gone up into second place on lap 27. You're watching Hill come up to lap Johnny Herbert, and the Englishman is in 11th place. And there's Michael Schumacher. He's obviously retiring. And Alain Prost rejoins. Now, this is the thing. Alain Prost is 6 laps behind. And that is Luca Badoer's Lola. And Michael Schumacher, who was 3rd in the championship, ahead of Damon Hill, who had lost his 3rd place in the championship to the German after Damon had the dreadful misfortune to have to retire from the lead in the British Grand Prix with an engine problem, and then the German Grand Prix with that tyre problem. And Riccardo Patrese, this is in the Benetton. Well, Patrese out after a very quick tyre stop, but that will have given the tremendously popular veteran Derek Warwick a chance to close the gap between himself and the Benetton Ford of Riccardo Patrese as you watch Damon Hill. And as we ride with Martin Brundle in the Ligier, who is in 5th position behind Derek Warwick. There is the footwork. Behind Martin Brundle is Pierluigi Martini. So it is Damon Hill leading on lap 33. Riccardo Patrese is in 2nd place. Gerhard Berger is 3rd. Derek Warwick is 4th, but only just, because you're looking at the 4th, 5th and 6th men now. 4th, Warwick. 5th, there he is, Martin Brundle. And in 6th position, Pierluigi Martini. And these 3 are only 3 seconds ahead of Johnny Herbert's Lotus, 7th position, who is 4 seconds ahead of Carl Wendlinger's Sauber, and he is in 8th place. Mark Blundell is 9th. Aguri Suzuki is 10th. Alio is 11th. Comas is 12th. Zanardi is in 13th place, with Thierry Boutsen in 14th position. The fastest lap so far, Riccardo Patrese, just over 1 minute 21 seconds, and that's about 2.5 seconds slower than Nigel Mansell's 1992 lap record. And you're with Damon Hill in the Williams now. You can compare the performance for yourself of the Williams Renault with the Ferrari of 3rd place man Gerhard Berger, who Damon Hill is shaping up to pass and to lap. Up into 6th gear at 170 miles an hour. He's going to go through here. Yes, Berger lets him. Berger makes no attempt to shut the door. And Gerhard Berger, 3rd place in the Ferrari, has been lapped by Damon Hill, who's now got Ukio Katayama's Tyrrell in front of him. And Katayama is in 15th position and, of course, has been lapped already. And we're at half distance now. And that is a Lotus that spun. And it's Johnny Herbert. And he's out of the race. He's not moving, so even if he hasn't stalled his engine, he's going to have to be pushed. Now here's a replay of what happened then. Herbert goes into the right-hander and just loses it, and that's the corner where a lot of people went off in practice. There's a bump there, and it's very easy, if you get your line just marginally wrong, to spin off and out as Johnny Herbert did.
I think we could well see Damon come into the pits for that 2nd set of tyres sometime in the next 3 laps. He's got a very comfortable 56-second lead over Patrese, and I really don't think there's too much doubt about the Williams team ability to run the pit stop without a problem. So I think we can expect to see him. I shouldn't say things like that, I'm sure, but I think we can expect to see him come into the pits for that 2nd set of tyres fairly soon now.
And Riccardo Patrese that you're looking at now is as Jonathan forecasted, so Damon complies and comes into the pits for his 2nd tyre stop. He's making absolutely sure that he's got the maximum amount of grip that he needs for the rest of the race. He's got a gigantic cushion, of course, which enables him to come in. Heaven knows what that idiot was doing running across the pit lane there. And I would expect there to be some disciplinary action, because I doubt if he's got the necessary pass. And anyway, Damon Hill has made his 2nd tyre stop, and he did so against a background of having a 56-second lead, and that is Allard, of course, who's surging his way up through the field. Patrese there on the way to his best result of the year, and indeed I don't think from talking to Flavio Briatore, he said today that, or said yesterday in fact, that he and Patrese had agreed that their contract that was due to run until next year, by mutual agreement, that they would both be free to pursue other alternatives next year, which I think is a very polite way of saying that Patrese will not be with the team. I suspect that it will be a young driver who will replace him. But the other big rumour here for the weekend is that Benetton are talking to Renault about an engine supply for next year. Now, I don't think, in fact, there's too much substance to it, but that's been one of the main stories of the weekend. Gerhard Berger in for a second set of tyres, and Derek Warwick now is in third position. Derek Warwick in a rostrum place. I can't remember when he finished there last. He's still got a long way to go. Reliability is going to be the name of the game now for the Williams-Renault leading this Benetton Ford, and Riccardo Patrese in second place. Derek Warwick's footwork. Martin Brundle is fourth. Martini is fifth, because Gerhard Berger, with that second tyre stop, has dropped to sixth position in the Ferrari. Brundle is on a charge again. Martin Brundle in fourth position behind the footwork Mugen. And Derek Warwick, with the prospect of being on the rostrum with the champagne, is not going to give up his place easily. By the same token, Martin Brundle, who has already had a third place this year, because he finished there in the San Marino Grand Prix, will be determined to get in. So Berger is past Martini. Gerhard Berger is up into fifth position. His next target is the fourth place of Martin Brundle and the third place of Derek Warwick. There they are. Brundle fourth. Warwick ahead of him in third position. Behind them is Berger. Into the pits comes Alain Prost, and he's in 14th position for the record, but he's still 7 laps adrift. But now Gerhard Berger in the Ferrari in fifth place is right up with the Brundle-Warwick battle for third. So it's V10 Mugen footwork, V10 Renault Ligier, V12 Ferrari, and they are together battling for third position, and they're on lap 50 there, 58th lap. And exactly as John... Oh, and there's contact there. Gerhard Berger dives through, biffs Martin Brundle's Ligier. Berger, ever the opportunist, but Martin Brundle, who is a forthright, outspoken chap, won't have taken to that very kindly. And there may well be an eyeball-to-eyeball confrontation between them and from South Wootton near Kingsley. Now, here's a replay. Martin Brundle in the blue Ligier goes a bit wide, starts to turn in, suddenly sees Berger alongside him. Berger's right rear hits Martin's left front, and hopefully that will not have deranged the Ligier suspension, but there's no guarantee, and the battle for third place continues.
Here's the hairpin, one more corner to go. This is where Berger needs to be right up behind Warwick. Now let's see what happens. He's in the dirty air for sure. That won't help the grip of the car. He still looks a bit too far away, although he looks closer this lap. He might have a chance this lap. Now let's see what happens. No, he's going to have to do a very wild outbraking manoeuvre to do it. He has a go, and well, he's through. Now he is through.
And the Austrian crowd here go absolutely berserk. I know we're in Hungary, but Austria is virtually just down the road. There are an enormous number of enthusiastic Austrian Formula One Grand Prix fans here. We join Damon Hill on his 76th lap. He's about halfway round it at the present moment. He's at the top of the circuit going into the right-hander at turn 8, accelerating away to 150 miles an hour as he goes through to turns 9 and the right-hander at turn 10. 150 miles an hour now, dropping downhill to the hairpin left-hander turn 12. Second gear, 60 miles an hour. That's Gerhard Berger in third position behind him. And of course he has been lapped. And Damon is coming through to start to complete his 76th lap and to start his 77th and last lap in the lead in the Hungarian Grand Prix.
Well, I'm not going to make any prediction at all at this stage, but Damon has done a superb job. He got off the line first, he got into the lead, and that's not easy. He was on the wrong side of the circuit, and he had the likes of Senna and Schumacher around him. He then drove absolutely superbly all the way. He's got Berger, incidentally, who's just trying to unlap himself. Whether or not he will bother, I don't know. We'll have to watch while that goes on. But Damon's got everything right. Behind him, yes, he's letting Berger go by. That's very sensible. You know, Damon does not want anything to go wrong, clearly, here. It's going to be a very overdue win if he gets it, but thoroughly well-deserved. Behind that, Riccardo Patrese, well, he's largely inherited second place, it has to be said, but having said that, he's made no mistake. Berger, very robust drive from him, very tough and a very deserved third place, with Brundle not being able to take Warwick, but two very sterling drives from the British drivers.
Damon Hill is approaching the end of the last lap of the Hungarian Grand Prix. He's coming down to that slow left-hander, which is turn 12. Then he's only got to do the short run up to the double right, turns 13 and 14. Damon Hill exits the last turn of the Hungarian Grand Prix, and he does indeed see the checkered flag, and Damon Hill wins the Grand Prix. Damon's first Grand Prix victory has been a brilliant one.
Well, the difficult bit, it was not going fast, it was trying to maintain a pace at which you were comfortable that you weren't going to make a mistake. And it's very, very difficult to judge that pace. It's an extremely slippery circuit, there's a lot of rubber. You have to pass cars, well, a lot of the time I had to pass cars down the pit straight, and they obliged me to go on the dirty track, and that meant that the tyres were picking up rubber and growing a bit. But I mean, other than that, everything was fantastic. The pit stops worked perfectly, and I had a lot more luck than I've had in the last few races, which is important.
The Minister of Transport presents the prize to the winning driver.
The car performed very well till 25 laps to go that I lost the third gear. That was the most difficult part of the race, because with an automatic gearbox going through a neutral part of the box is not very easy, and I had to go in many places in fourth gears where I had to go in where I was going in third, so it was not easy to contain the coming back of Gerhard, but anyway I'm very pleased with this second place because it's good, still good for our team.
It was very, very hard, physically very hard, but also I had to do a strategy from the beginning on, and it went everything well. Of course, a bit by luck because there was a lot of cars moving off, but I didn't do any mistake all the race. In the beginning, I hold up a little bit, Ricardo, but it was a part of the strategy because I used my tires. I know from Goodyear that I'm using my tires too hard, or Ferrari is using too much tires, so I know that I'm going to have to stop twice. So it was important for me to have a good start and to keep everybody behind me until I stopped the first time. And the rest was fine. I mean, I just could do well. I had to overtake some cars. It was a little bit hard with Brundle, but I had no other choice. And I overtook 3 or 4 cars in the finish, and that was very good. I'm very happy with the result.
July auction.